It is Tuesday, August 12th. This is the Christian Commute. I am your host, Seth Dunn, and I'm back again. So glad to be back. I went to the doctor last Tuesday, and my pneumonia was downgraded to bronchitis, and they gave me medicine, and they gave me a shot, and I feel much better now. I still have the lingering effects of that, but otherwise, I'm pretty much okay. Although, I'm going to tell you this. I can feel my throat getting scratchy. My wife has a scratchy throat. My kids went back to school this week, which means all the kids in town are going to get together and get each other's germs and bring them home to their parents. So I wouldn't be surprised if I got sick again. But for now, I am fully operational and doing the Christian Commute. So we should expect a normal week this week on the Christian Commute. But I'm gonna go ahead and say this. I usually come to work Tuesday, Thursday, Friday if all goes well and I don't have stuff to do, like I don't have a doctor's appointment or a dentist or something like that. There's really no reason at all on planet Earth for me to ever come here unless I have to do something at my office physically. Like I'm working on a project in one of our manufacturing areas, so I'll have to come to walk over there and look at it and talk to people. Okay. And every once in a while, I might want an in-person meeting with someone, just to put a face to the name. But most of the time, there's no reason for me to be in the office other than I like my office. It's my little sanctuary, okay, with my monitors and my stuff and no kids running on me, and no cat, because I don't like my cat, and she lives in the basement. And Friday, my big push is I don't need to be here, and it's a ghost town in my office on Friday because it's a lot of people choose to work from home that day. But I like to play ping pong with my friends. But as we get into school and my kids having meets and stuff, I might just start working from home on Friday. If I come in a half day and then go home for the other half of the day, of course I'll do a program. But my professional life and lifestyle is getting to be, as some of you have already noticed, where the new standard may be 2 shows a week instead of 3. Now, my friends at work might say this has something to do with me losing at ping pong lately instead of being the number 1 guy on the board with a 60%, 70% winning percentage, winning less than 50% of the time. That's what my friends might say. But some of it gets to be like, I like playing ping pong, but was it worth 2 hours and all the gas to drive in here today? And I didn't really talk to anybody. So we'll see how that goes. I don't think, unless I live in some far remote place, I don't ever think I want to be somebody who's fully remote and that I don't have an office to go to, because it makes you feel like a citizen of the world to take a shower, shave, put clothes on, drive to work. I do a commute. Other people do other things on their way to work. Have coworkers. Have conversations with those coworkers. Eat lunch with them. Like I ate lunch with the same guy I eat lunch with every Tuesday today. That's part of that. And I've seen fully remote people. They want to get out and be around others. Even your autistic host knows it's important to go out and be around other human beings. It's also good to be walking around the office and, the president and the CFO are like, oh yeah, that guy still works here. Let's keep paying him. But just the nature of my business is a lot of click, 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 click. All right. Top, click, click, click. Let's get on with the show. I have a full show for you today. Today's show title is Woodstock Drinks Roswell Street's Milkshake I drink your milkshake. Woodstock drinks Roswell Street's milkshake. I'll explain that later. It's sort of an abstract title. We're starting a new chapter in the Bible chapter review. We finally got to Luke chapter 9. We have a question in the inbox about honoring your parents, honoring our parents, honoring one's parents. There's the grammatically correct thing to say. Third person, honoring one's parents, because we don't want to talk in the second person, because that's what uneducated people do. All right, honoring one's parents in the midst of parental misbehavior at that. But before we get to all that wonderful things, all those wonderful things, I want to remind you of the Y Project. Don't forget to gimme money for the Y Project. Help me pay for those websites. Help me pay for those ads. To share ycrosspoint.com, yrockbridge.com, yelevation.com, recently finished, and ynorthpoint.org. With a world of people who are flirting with the idea of going to a seeker-sensitive Ayatollah of rock and rolla goat church with a coffee bar in the Purple Haze. And let me tell you a little anecdote about that. I think I was smiling 10 miles wide when this happened. It's hard to remember ever being so tickled with myself. Is that a Southern phrase, tickled? I'm just tickled. I don't know, and I know old people say it. I don't ever say tickled. I know my grandparents did. Just tickled pink. Tickled means real happy, not necessarily in a smug way. But let me tell you how happy I was this weekend. So Sunday night, I took my twins and my wife. We went and watched Kennesaw State soccer team. We watched the girls soccer. I'm trying to pick up on how to coach 11-on-11. My 11-on-11 soccer starts any time now. So we thought we'd have a nice little family outing. We had a great time, and I was really enjoying the game. Not even messing with my phone at all. It was like it was 1995, and I was watching a sporting event and not looking at my phone every 2 seconds. But then towards the end, it was 4-1 with 15 minutes left, which is like being up 100-0 in a football game in the fourth quarter in a soccer game. It's basically over. And my phone buzzes. I check my message, and it's a message to ycrosspoint.com. And this was the message: thank you for doing this. This is great. There's a church about an hour up the road in Dalton called Rockbridge. You should do them next. I was just so happy because I was like, I did it already. I could not act fast enough to go to yrockbridge.com and send this person the link, dude, I already did it. It's like, you know when somebody thinks, I wish we had this, and they have to wait for someone to invent it? Like, I tell you what Panda Express invented, hot orange chicken. Talking about what a great day Sunday. I had hot orange chicken from Panda Express for the first time. That made my life better. Went to watch a soccer game with my family, and then this guy's like, hey, you should do rockbridge.com. I was like, I already got it. I did it. I didn't say I already did it. I didn't say I already got it. All I sent back was the hyperlink. Boom. Mic drop. It's right here. You're asking for it. I've got it. yrockbridge.com. Come on down and see me, brother. I got it. We're going to make you happy at Happy Motors. Some of y'all don't know what in the world I'm talking about, but if you grew up in the Chattanooga area, then when I did, you remember a used car company commercial called Happy Motors, and a guy in a chicken suit would say, I got it. We're going to make you happy at Happy Motors. Come on down and see me, brother. And I was like, come on down and see me, brother. I got it. yrockbridge.com. I did it first. Here it is. Share it to all your friends caught up in the seeker-sensitive goat church coffee bar Ayatollah of rock and roll church in the purple haze. So don't forget through PayPal, Venmo, and whatnot to support me on that. And the best way to support, besides, best way to support me is prayer. And if you can do that, that's great. Send me money too. That's what they always say. But don't forget to share it. Just share the sites on your social media if you're local to North Carolina, Dalton, Cartersville, Ackworth, Cleveland, Tennessee, Hickson, Chatsworth, basically all of northwest Georgia, the Tennessee Valley, and North Carolina, where Stephen Furtick and J.D. Greer both bestride the narrow world like a colossus. Luke chapter 9, verses 1 through 6. Luke chapter 9, verses 1 through 6. And he called the 12 together, he being Jesus, and gave them power and authority over all the demons and to heal diseases. And he sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to perform healing. And he said to them, take nothing for your journey, neither a staff, nor a bag, nor bread, nor money, and do not even have 2 tunics apiece. Whatever house you enter, stay there until you leave that city. And as for those who do not receive you, as you go out from city to city, shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them. Departing, they began going throughout the villages, preaching the gospel and healing everyone. So this is the beginning of chapter 9. Let's think about what happened in chapter 8. And remember, the Bible doesn't really have chapters. We added them later. Not we, some French guy from the 1500s did it. I didn't do it. And I think he did a good job. But we being Christendom, we being the church, we added them later. So in our previous Bible chapter reviews, what did we see? Jesus calming the storm. He has authority over nature. Jesus casting out demons. He has authority over the supernatural. Jesus healing people. Jesus raising the girl from the dead. So remember the story of the Gerasene demoniac. Okay? He made an unclean man clean. He cleaned him out of demons, got rid of the unclean pigs from the guy living in the graveyard. On the way there, there was a story. Oh, we're going to perish, Lord. Remember that story? We're going to perish, and oh, you have little faith. And Jesus rebuked the wind, and it calms down. All right? They get back. They got Jairus' daughter. She's about to die. He resurrects her, brings her back to life. On the way to do that, by the way, that's not the resurrection, like the resurrection of the dead that's coming. You might call that a resuscitation, but nevertheless, he brought her back to life. On the way there was the woman with the hemorrhage, the unclean woman whom he made clean. So Jesus is going around casting out demons and healing people. With what? Power and authority. He has power and authority to do that. Power over what? What we'd call the natural world. Disease. Sickness. The wind. Authority over what? Demons. Because demons are entities. They're personal. He has authority to command entities that can make decisions and do things. Sickness, even though sickness is caused by living organisms, like bacteria and viruses, they're not personal. They're not making decisions. They're just replicating themselves. Certainly the wind doesn't make a decision. But Jesus has power and authority over the natural and supernatural, over the physical and metaphysical, and he gives power and authority to his disciples and commissions them to go out to the various cities of Israel and preach the kingdom of God. And while they're doing this, they're going to perform healing. They're going to do the same things Jesus has been doing as he's gone along preaching the kingdom of God. But he gives them this stipulation. Don't take anything with you. Don't pack up for your trip. Don't take provisions. My mother-in-law doesn't leave the house without a cooler full of stuff. She'll come visit me, and she'll have food in a cooler. I'm like, hey, I live 90 miles from you, and there's 1,000 grocery stores on the way. Like, we got stuff here. You don't need to pack a cooler in the back of your Crown Victoria, but nevertheless, she does. Even today, we live on trips. Do we really pack things up? We might have some snacks. I drove to Florida last month. I had a bag with some swim trunks and a change of clothes. I'm going to an Airbnb. They're going to have everything there. I'm going to buy food at Aristide when I get there. And I know there'll be a billion restaurants and gas stations on the way. But back in that day, they didn't have the hotels. It was actually closer to Airbnb than hotels. Look how history sort of repeats itself in a cycle. We got to the point where instead of going to a town and trying to find hospitality at some stranger's house who's going to take you in because you're of the same ethnicity or some distant kinsman in some way, we're just going to stay in a hotel. But now what do you do with Airbnb? You go get a room in somebody's house. But Jesus tells the people, don't pack anything. Don't pack any food to eat on the way. Don't even bring any money. Don't even bring a change of clothes. Don't even bring it, or outerwear. Tunic was the outer garment. Don't even bring another outer garment. He didn't yell it like that, I don't think. Don't even bring an outer garment. He probably just said it. Take nothing for your journey. What are the disciples going to be dependent upon? The hospitality of those who are going to receive them as the kingdom messengers of Jesus Christ. Now, what happens if they're not received? Jesus says, shake the dust off your feet. As what? A witness against the people who wouldn't accept the messengers of God. If messengers of God come into your town doing miracles, you should bend over backwards to show them hospitality. If messengers of Jesus come into your town proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ, you should bend over backwards to show them hospitality. And by the way, in that culture, you're supposed to show people hospitality anyway. But those who would not receive them, shake the dust off your feet. The dust is the dust of that city. We're not taking your city with us symbolically. We want nothing to do with it. It's like a curse. It's like saying you don't have anything to do. You have, with the kingdom of God, you have no place in the kingdom of God. Oh, what a damning statement. Oh, what a damning gesture. And what's the Bible say? They went out and did it. So we had this whole story of Jesus preaching. Was it Luke 5? Jesus preaching the Sermon on the Plain. Then he's going around teaching and healing people, going this, that, and this, there, and the other, raising Jairus' daughters. I mean, we got names, casting out demons in a city. And then we get to this part, and it just says the disciples did it. So they went and did the same stuff. The 12 apostles, I should say. They went and did the same stuff, but Luke doesn't tell us the ins and outs of their story. I'm sure Dallas Jenkins could take creative liberty with this and make a series about each apostle going and doing things. Oh, I shouldn't say that out loud now. I'm giving him ideas. And with that, we'll end the Bible chapter review. I want to mention this. Next time you come against Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses are works-based people. They're going to try and outdo you. And what they know is that evangelicals are largely a bunch of pew warmers who never evangelize anybody and give very little. They know that. They know that. And they're out there every Saturday, 2 by 2, sharing the Watchtower material, sharing their false gospel, going to people's houses or standing on the street corner or wherever else. In Cartersville, they go to the farmer's market. Used to see them at the airport a lot in Atlanta. I haven't seen any lately. I haven't been to the farmer's market. I always ask my wife, did you see Jehovah's Witnesses? I'm going to go there. I'm going to talk to the Jehovah's Witnesses. And when they say, well, do you go out and evangelize people? Just, yes. Of course I do. Yes, I evangelize people. I evangelize people all the time. I have a podcast, and then on my podcast, I tell people to get saved. I on my podcast, and then I tell people wherever I'm at, you need to get saved and know Jesus. Yes, I evangelize people. And they say, well, we do it just like the Bible. We've gone out 2 by 2. All these other churches aren't going out 2 by 2. We are. And that's just proof that we're God's organization. We're Jehovah's organization on earth. We're going 2 by 2. I've had them make this argument to me. And you know what you say? You got your wallet on you? I notice you're wearing a coat. Where'd you park your car? Because the disciples weren't supposed to take a staff, which was what you'd use to defend yourself on the highway from highwaymen or lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. You drove up in your car with your wife. You're not far from your house. Your church is over there by Ingles. I've seen it. You've got your wallet with you. You didn't come to somebody's town and ask for a place to stay. Don't act like you're going out 2 by 2, evangelizing strangers and doing miracles and depending totally on the hospitality of others for food and money. Don't act like you did that. You didn't. Somebody said, the Mormons do. Well, they do it better than Jehovah's Witnesses, closer to that. Anyway, that's a bonus. That's just, listen, this show's supposed to be about apologetics, right? I have a master's degree in that. Okay? This is Christian and Commute, a theological podcast, a Commute League podcast about theology, apologetics, and other matters of Christian interest. There's apologetics for you. When you run up against the cult people, they'll cite this Bible verse, and you can say, well, you don't do what this Bible verse says at all. All right. Let's go to the inbox. Do you have a question about Christian theology or apologetics? If you do, send it to me. Tell me where you're from and keep it short enough for me to memorize. Today's question comes from a longtime listener, Aaron. And by the way, it's also the last question I have in the inbox. Aaron from Texas. So I don't have any others. So I got nothing for you Thursday if you don't send it in. Send in a question. Somebody out there. Send me a question about Christian theology and apologetics. Here's Aaron from Texas. Here's her question. How does a believer navigate honoring father and mother in messy situations involving parental divorce or some kind of parental betrayal or bad choices? Parental bad choices. Like, yeah, some of y'all got parents who just don't do right. How do we navigate that? Well, the simple answer is honor to whom honor is due. What does it mean to honor your father and mother? The ancient Israelites knew what that meant, but what does it mean to us? It should mean the same thing. So if you think about it in that society, which was an honor-shame culture, you don't want to shame your parents. You honor your parents. Well, that's very broad. You honor your parents in how you treat others. And if you act like how you were raised. You can honor your parents in the way you dress, not looking slovenly. You can honor your parents in the way you treat people at the grocery store, how you talk to a waitress. But basically, honor is an obligation. If you're a millionaire and your mother has Alzheimer's and she's in the state-run county nursing home instead of Green Grove old people care, are you honoring your parent? So I want you to think of an obligation they would have had back then in their culture. They shelter, feed, and clothe their parents when their parents get too old to work. Now, if your parent is a real jerk, do you still have to do that? Yes, honor to whom honor is due. They are due honor because they're your parents, and you have to fulfill your responsibilities to them. So, let's say your dad cheats on your mom, divorces her, causes economic tumult in your family. Hold on, my car seems like it's vibrating funny. I don't know. Nothing seems to be breaking. It's just weird. Maybe it's a bad road. I hope I don't have a loose tire. Let me see if there's a light on. No, there's no light on. This car has 110,000 miles. Maybe it's time to drive a different one. Let's go back to my example about divorce. Here's a statement about divorce. Divorce never improves the family's financial situation. Unless your mother leaves your dad for some rich dude and he's a millionaire and your stepfather gives you a Corvette. I don't know. But what happens when two people get divorced? Well, now they have to have separate residences and they have to pay for a lawyer. Whereas before they were in one house with one household expense and no lawyer expense. Who's that eventually hurt? It's the children. Well, now they need more money. So let's say one of the parents has to work more than they were before, spending less time with whom? The children. All right. Divorce is a financial nightmare. I heard a stat when I was in college. I don't know if it's still true, that when a woman divorces, her economic outlook drops by 40%. She basically loses 40% of her wealth or her means. She's like that much. She's 40% poorer. I heard that in college. It must be true, right? I heard it in college 20 years ago, 22 years ago. So let's say your father divorces your mother, ruins your family economically, goes off to live with his mistress, doesn't even marry her. Say he has some bastard kids with the mistress. And then when your father gets older, he can't see very well and he needs somebody to drive him to the doctor. And the mistress won't do it, and the bastard kid's not going to do it, even though the bastard kid should. Still a father and mother. What do? Well, your father hasn't treated your mother well. You drive him to the doctor because he's old and he's your dad. And he needs your help because you have obligations to him. That's what honoring your father and mother is. It's fulfilling your familial obligations. They're your elders. It's respecting them. Now, if you have godly parents, a way to honor your father and mother is to live the godly life they've instructed you to live, not only by their teaching, but by their example. I don't drink, smoke, and cuss. You know who else doesn't drink, smoke, and cuss? My parents. It would be dishonoring to my parents for me to go out to the local sports bar and drop F-bombs and drink a bunch of beer and smoke. I'm an American. It's my right. It's been dishonoring to my parents. I wasn't raised that way. That's not the person they programmed, if you will, me to be. So yeah, you do honor your parents by living out their example if they're godly parents, but sometimes you have ungodly parents. Parents who weren't good to you. Parents who get divorced. That's a sin, y'all. Parents who betray you in some way. I mean, there's people out there, their parents steal their identity when they're a kid to get a credit card and gamble. I got a 9-year-old, I'm going to get a credit card and his social security number so I can go gamble. And that kid has bad credit their whole life. Well, now your degenerate gambler of a father needs a basement to live in. Well, it's going to be yours because you need to honor your father and your mother. Sometimes it's easier or harder, right? If you have great parents who supported you your whole life, it's really easy to honor them, isn't it? My parents paid for me to go to college twice and loaned me the money for the house that I live in so I could afford a bigger house for my giant family. My dad bought a new truck. He's about to give me his old one. My parents just took me and my brother and his wife and my nephew and my whole family to Florida to stay in a beach house. My dad coached my baseball team. My dad coached my basketball team. My parents have never missed a game that I've played in any sport ever. My parents prayed with me at night. My parents took me to church. Real easy to honor that, right? I won the lottery on parents, and might I add, grandparents. Some people didn't. Thou shalt, let me get another 10 commandment out there. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Well, if you've got a smoking hot wife who's super sexually available and always in a good mood and cooks and cleans to a T and never raises her voice wrong at the children, you don't want to cheat on that woman. But if your wife is a bear, and the Bible says it's better to live on the roof, be on the roof than with a nagging wife. If your wife is a nagging female dog of a woman who mistreats your kids, mistreats you, and never wants to have sex, well, all of a sudden, all the other women you come across, maybe the lady in the few offices over, or some girl you know for the gym, well, they start to look pretty good. Guess what? Thou shalt not commit adultery. Even if your wife sucks, you're not allowed to cheat on her. And even if your parents suck, you're still supposed to honor them, because who are you ultimately honoring? When you do the right thing, you're honoring God. The only commandment, by the way, with a promise. Honor your father and mother so that your days will be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Do you understand the importance of honoring father and mother? It's like the bedrock of society, because families are a bedrock of society. That's super important. Now hold on. I'm stuck. Get your GMC Chevy Savannah van out of my way in the right lane. Like an electrician's van. Thank you for politely getting over. I was stuck between him and a tractor trailer. I couldn't move. All right. Thanks for that question, Aaron. Send in your questions about Christian theology and apologetics to me. Dear Seth, my wife is horrible. Am I allowed to cheat on her? No! You have to love her like Christ loved the church. When Paul wrote that, he knew sometimes it's easier to get along than other times. All right. Woodstock drinks Roswell Street's milkshake. There was an article in Baptist Press the other day. It was written by Scott Barkley, who's a Baptist Press correspondent, and I believe he's a deacon right here at the First Baptist Church in Cartersville. The former pastor of First Baptist Church of Cartersville, Jeremy Morton, was featured in the article because he's now, and has been for, 5 or 6 years, the pastor of First Baptist Church of Woodstock. He replaced 5-star Johnny Hunt, that scoundrel, back before not as many people knew what a scumbag Johnny Hunt was. I knew, but I didn't know how bad. And the story in Baptist Press was about First Baptist Church of Woodstock absorbing Roswell Street Baptist Church. Roswell Street Baptist Church voted to become members of First Baptist Church of Woodstock. So sooner, I don't know how it works out legally with lawyers and the votes and the bylaws, but eventually, if not already, Roswell Street Baptist Church doesn't exist anymore. Now, if you're out there from Texas or California, that may mean nothing to you, but if you're from Georgia, that's sort of a shocker, because Roswell Street Baptist Church was huge. It was a big, wealthy church at one time. The pastor there was Nelson Price, and Nelson Price talked like this, and he was a golden-tongued preacher. Kind of somebody who might rival Adrian Rogers, getting on TV and preaching to people, especially around here. All right. In fact, there is a dorm at my seminary named after Nelson Price. That's what a big deal he was in Baptist world. And when Nelson Price was there, Roswell Street Baptist Church grew under what we call the invest and invite model. The preachers, the pastors of Roswell Street would tell people, give us money so we can build a building, donate money to the church, we're going to build facilities for preaching and education. Invite your friends in, we'll evangelize them and they'll join. The invest and invite model. And they got real big doing that because they had the golden-throated Nelson Price preaching, and he was so good that they put his sermons on TV. And there were people, if they sat in certain pews at Roswell Street, they'd show up on TV. And if you wanted to be on TV and you're a member of Roswell Street, you could know where to sit each week, get there early so you could be seen on TV at church. I was told about that invest and invite model by Tim Samples, my former pastor at Expedition Church, and he would mentor me as I went through seminary, and he told me about the invest and invite model. He said, it's really not what we're supposed to do in the Bible. Everybody's supposed to evangelize, but that's where he grew up, under that invest and invite model, and under that model, Roswell Street got to have a multi-million-dollar property. Also, when I was in seminary, I had 2 friends who were on staff there. It's kind of funny, looking back, it was the type of job that I would want or be envious of, right? Because I'm going to seminary in the evening with my friends. In the morning, I get up and I drive through Atlanta traffic to get to Georgia Pacific to do internal audits, making $60,000 a year. But they get to go up and they get to go to a church and they have associate minister jobs. And they're getting paid to teach Bible classes and disciple people, and that's what I want to do. And then I look back and I think about, I was probably making twice as much as those guys, and they got, those jobs aren't even real church jobs in the Bible. You just have pastors and deacons. This is just some invest and invite church invented 1,000 staff people for some Moses model type program that I would discern now as being the wrong way to do something. And it was like God actually had me set up way better than my friends were. And they would come and tell me, I'm like, man, things are tough at Roswell Street. Their names were Justin and Philip. And Justin and Philip would come and say, we're on staff here and they're making cuts. We don't have enough money. We've built this big facility and we don't have enough money to take care of the facilities. And they're talking about letting people go. And at that time, Roswell Street was trying the model that Johnson Ferry has also tried successfully for them, where they had I'm going to call it an old people service and a young people service. So Ernest Easley, who drove a Corvette, just throwing that out there, he was the big money man senior pastor. And he would show up and preach the early service. And then there was another pastor named Davin. I think they called it the connection service. I forget what it was. But the younger people would listen to Davin's preaching and they'd have different music than they would at the first service. That's when they're starting to tailor for the old and the young, breaking up the service of the church. Right? This is an ecclesiastical mistake. But that didn't work. They cut my friends. Then they got their job back because I think some of the deacons or elders are like, why are we cutting the young people? Why don't we cut the older people, Mr. Corvette driver? But eventually, Easley left, my friends had to leave, and Roswell Street continued with its problem of not enough people, not enough money to take care of the buildings they had built. There's actually the same situation happened at First Baptist Church in Jacksonville, Florida, and a pastor had to come in there and start selling off the land. And there's a podcast about how he did it and the challenges he faced. If you want to listen to that podcast while I'm working from home on Mondays and Wednesdays. But my friends would text me because they knew I didn't like Johnny Hunt, and they'd say, guess who was on the screen at our church today? And Johnny Hunt would always have messages for Roswell Street Baptist. Like, here's your superstar preacher. And they're like 10, 15 miles down the road. Roswell Street's in Marietta, Woodstock's in Woodstock. Okay, so Roswell Street Baptist Church was sort of the big flagship Baptist church in Marietta. Woodstock's a big flagship Baptist church in Woodstock, First Baptist Woodstock. And at that time, years and years ago, over a decade ago, well, let me think. Yeah, about a decade ago, Woodstock would take over churches that were struggling and make them campuses of Woodstock. All those that had been spun off, I thought they had stopped. But now they've taken over Roswell Street because Roswell Street just couldn't get by. So what does Woodstock get? Vibrant members? No, not really. Those are people who couldn't keep their church going to begin with. They get Roswell Street's property, a tax-assessed value of $3.5 million. So all those years that Roswell Street and Ernest Easley were cozying up with Johnny Hunt, his church was sitting there waiting to take their property, take their stuff. Now they got a footprint in Marietta. And by the way, for how many people do you think for years, especially after Nelson Price left, would just drive past Roswell Street to go to First Baptist Church of Woodstock, that mega church, so they could hear Hunt preach? Now, why do I say First Baptist Woodstock drank Roswell Street's milkshake? Well, you can Google, there's an old Pulpit and Pen article I wrote 8 years ago called Johnny Hunt Drinks Your Milkshake. And it's about how Johnny Hunt was partnering with NAM to take over old dying churches. They called it church revitalization, but what really happened is a rich church like First Baptist Woodstock would go to a church that's struggling to pay its bills and say, we're going to save you. We're going to take your property. You guys keep going. You get to keep your conversation. We'll even let you have a campus pastor. You become a part of First Baptist Woodstock, and we're going to revitalize your church. What they're not saying, until all y'all old people die, because I know y'all don't want to change churches. Until y'all die, we're going to take your property, and then we got millions of dollars of property to do what they want. And so we're going to hold your property until you die. That's how a reverse mortgage works. I've talked about this on the show before. Old people get a reverse mortgage. They keep their house, and the mortgage company pays them a monthly stipend every month. And when they die, the house is sold, and all that's paid back to the mortgage company. Reverse mortgage. That's how church, quote-unquote, revitalization works. They take an old and dying church, they take their property, they let the congregation stay there until it dies out. And somebody says, well, no, the revitalization is they're going to get people in there and fill it back up and spin it off. Show me how many times that's happened. No, they're going to take your property. And the reason I bring this up and mentioned it was about Scott Barkley and the former pastor of First Baptist Cartersville is because First Baptist Cartersville is getting to be a church where maybe if they wanted to, they could plant a campus, but they haven't because I think the leadership knows it's unbiblical to have a multi-site. At least the conversations I've had with some of them. So what I saw, and this is what gets me, Baptists, I've said this a million times till I'm blue in the face, multi-site ecclesiology is against Article 6 of the Baptist Faith and Message. But is that what Baptist Deacon Scott Barkley wrote for Baptist Press? Now, he doesn't have to write a story that says, flagship church run by my former pastor has unbiblical, unbaptist ecclesiology and has acquired a $3.5 million tax. Do you understand $3.5 million tax assessed? Because churches don't pay taxes. That real estate's worth like $10 or $15 million. Especially now that people are leaving Atlanta to the suburbs more. Scott Barkley didn't have to write an article that says another unbiblical move by a megachurch, land grab. Roswell Street dies after years of mismanagement. He didn't have to write that article. He could just say nothing at all. But no, here's the news. This is what the big church is doing. And yeah, Roswell Street voted for it. 87% voted for this. Because apparently they'd never been taught ecclesiology. And I want to point this out. I've mentioned this on the show before. The former CFO of First Baptist Woodstock, Dan Dorner, told me if they don't do engaging youth ministry that keeps the young people there, the young people will leave to go to Johnson Ferry and take their parents with them, which is another SBC megachurch. My seminary had a campus there. And it's 15, 20, 30 minutes away from Woodstock and Roswell Street. And the guy was telling me, we're competing for money and because parents have the money. We're competing for families with this other Southern Baptist church. So for years, Woodstock and Roswell Street have competed. Well, I like Johnny Hunt. Well, I like Nelson Price. We got Johnny Hunt. We got Nelson Price. Nelson Price dies. Well, we better get somebody who's a great speaker like Ernest Easley. All right. Easley couldn't carry Nelson Price's water. And what's happened now? Now the competitor has put their other competitor out of business and taken their property. They've absorbed them. It's like when Vince McMahon bought WCW. You had the Monday Night Wars. Maybe I'll call this the Sunday Night Wars. Maybe that's better than the Milkshake thing. Remember the Monday Night Wars? WWF and WCW went head-to-head, Raw and Nitro. Who's going to get the ratings? And eventually WWF won the battle, and they bought WCW. They didn't just put them out of business, they bought them. That's what Woodstock's done, y'all. Without spending a dime, they're getting millions of dollars of church property, and they're calling it a campus. Oh, Seth, well, they're just helping them. If they're just helping them, why don't they just give them the money to pay to have them run until they get back on their feet? Why don't they just pay all the staff for all the pastors and rebuild all their stuff until they get back on their feet? Why don't they do that? I mean, when you see a homeless guy on the street and you're going to help him, you're like, let me give you a loan. Just in case you ever get on your feet, you're going to have to pay me back for this suit I gave you in this cup of soup. And for the 2 weeks I paid for you at the efficiency suite. You know, so you get a job interview. Now, when you help people, you just help them. When you absorb another campus of a church, you get their property and you get their givers. And all you have to do is violate Article 6 of the Baptist Faith and Message to do it. I drink your milkshake. Drink it up. That is from the movie There Will Be Blood, where Daniel Day-Lewis plays an oil baron who just wants everybody's oil, whether they sell him their land or not. So in keeping with its history, it's done it before. Church in Gwinnett, church in Panama City, and it's always presented to the membership. Like when I was there, they've asked us to do this. They've come for our help. Listen, if a woman comes to you and says, my husband has a low sperm count, we're trying to get pregnant and we can't, will you help me by getting me pregnant? We just come over and have sex with me until I get pregnant, and then, get out of our lives and we'll raise this baby. Can you help me with that? Which is a subplot in 2 movies that Kevin Costner is in. 1, The Postman, and 2, what's the name of that movie? Is it The Big Sleep? It's about a funeral. Actually, Kevin Costner plays the dead guy in that movie, but they cut him out. You can check my trivia on that. If a woman comes and says, get me pregnant, so my family can have kids. You think, oh, I'm doing something good. They're asking me for help. No, you're sinning. You're committing adultery. Stop it. If another church to you comes and says, absorb us, say no. That's not biblical ecclesiology. Maybe we'll help you in some other way. But here, the fact of the matter is, when a church is dying, sometimes you got to think, well, maybe God put out their lamp, so to speak. They're dying for a reason. They're dying because it was a see me on TV church. They're dying because it was an invest and invite church. They're dying because it's the type of church who says, we're going to split our church up into separate services to placate the preferences of different age groups. And now another church that was better at doing the same thing drank their milkshake. And we got a Baptist deacon. I'm not going to say he doesn't have the guts to condemn it. I'm not saying he has to get out there at Baptist Press and condemn it, because that's not what Baptist Press is trying to do. But you don't have to report on it like it's so great, Scott. And here's what's not going to happen. The elders of First Baptist Church are not going to go to Scott Barkley and say, you're a deacon here. This church over here is violating Baptist Faith and Message Article 6 with a guy who used to work here. You don't need to be writing sunshine pumping pieces about multi-campus churches. They're not going to do it. It could be because they're too theologically incompetent to even understand that. Or it could be that they just don't think that's nice. And I'm not just trying to say this is Scott Barkley, some guy. You know, I'm going to see Scott Barkley at the barbecue restaurant and like, hey, sorry about roasting you on my podcast, Scott. But it's churches all over. The people writing for Baptist Press don't know that this is bad. They're acting like it's good. And listen, your church is either going to get its milkshake drank or be the milkshake drinker if you don't get stuff like this straight. A few years ago, First Baptist had what they called the Legacy Project. They produced a video. They said, we're going to have the Legacy Project. You know who ran the Legacy Project? Who was the pastor at the time? The guy from First Baptist Church of Woodstock, who, by the way, is just a great guy. He's a great guy. He made the wrong decision here. His church made the wrong decision. He's a nice guy. They named it a Legacy Project. What? Because we're going to build educational space and we're going to build stuff. This is the legacy of our church. I'm sure Roswell Street had the same thing. We're going to do the legacy. You know, Tabernacle had captured the vision. Listen, some church from across town with some slick-tongued mega preacher is going to take your legacy if you keep depending on the invest and invite model and having 2 or 3 different church services with different styles to market to people. Mark my words. That's what's going to become of your money. And we see it happen with the empty milkshake glass at Roswell Street Baptist Church. Thanks for listening to The Christian Commute. Lord willing, I'll be back with you again Thursday. As always, God bless. Remember, Christianity is not about getting saved. It's about being saved.